would an example of a track of yours that sort of is reminiscent of tonal music be something like Gleam, for example, where we have that chord progression that is, it's almost like this R&B type chord progression going through it, but with those alternate tunings where it's like, when you walk in one of those wacky houses and like you've got walls that are just a couple
Hmm.
degrees off, it's like you realize something's not quite right. Well, and again,
Yeah, yeah.
okay, but sorry, let me back that up because see, even saying not quite right, that's me coming to it from a tempered sort of perspective, something that is maybe, let's say, a departure from 12 tone.
Well, no, you're well within your right to say that something doesn't sound quite right, but with the implication that it doesn't quite sound right to you because maybe you haven't experienced that before, and right, and but as you continue listening to these things, they start to sound right, which is very odd. And I think you're spot on about the kind of R&B thing. I was definitely trying to go for a kind of R&B-ish kind of progression. So you've got that whole kind of 2-5-1 kind of chord progression, but with like the tritone substitution. But I'm filling in chords in the gaps. This is where it gets hazy for me because I don't approach music like an analyst. I just like to do stuff and make stuff that sounds cool. So I started from the idea of I want to do something that has this kind of R&B-ish progression. But in experimenting with that and messing around, I found that I could slot extra chords in because this tuning in this song. The song's called Gleam, and the tuning is 22 EDO. So that's 22 equal divisions of the octave. It has some very interesting characteristics, this tuning, because it has conventional triads available. I can play a major chord, I can play a minor chord. The difference is because of the tuning being slightly different, you don't end up in the same place that you expect to be. For example, if I think of a circle of fifths, I know that I could start on a C and I could go up a few steps and I'm on an E. But in 22, you don't end up there. You end up somewhere between an E and an F because the fifths are sharper. So when you start stacking these sharp fifths, you end up you after a few steps, this error accumulates and you end up on different notes. In a sense, functional harmony exists, but the rules are different.
Okay, so on this, and
Sorry, there's quite a lot to unpack there.
yeah, so and please excuse me if I'm like totally noobing you out right now, but the even the concept of fifths is a little bit of a mind bend. How are you what is the qualification for a fifth? Because if we were to do a 1-to-1 ratio of 12 EDO versus 22 EDO, it's not the same. We're going up 7 steps in 12, 7 half steps in 12, 12 EDO to achieve a fifth. How are you getting to a fifth in 22 EDO?
I think it's 13 steps,
Okay.
13 or 14. I think it's 13 steps. I might be wrong on that. But yeah, so, and the tuning of the fifth is slightly different. In 12 tone, the fifth is a little bit narrow. It's a little bit flat compared to a just perfect fifth. The just perfect fifth is, okay, again, there's just so many little details to this. But if you think of a pitch has, you can measure a pitch with hertz.
Sure.
Okay. And so a fifth is two different pitches. It's an interval, so it's the difference between two pitches. So you can measure the frequency of both of those.
Yes.
Okay. So let's imagine I have 220 hertz. That's my A, let's say.
Yeah,
And
A3.
300, right. And 330 would be a pure fifth. And that is a ratio of 3/2. Or you can think of it as 1.5. That's a frequency ratio. You can multiply that by 220 and you will find the note that is a fifth above. But in the equal tempered system, we don't have these pure ratios like 3/2. They're these very long, many, many digits after the decimal place, slightly complicated looking numbers. And in 12 equal, so the tuning we're all used to, it's slightly flat. It's about 2 cents flat, or just under 2 cents flat, which by my estimation is pretty damn good. It's very pure sounding, almost pure sounding. But in 22 EDO, the fifths are, I can't remember exactly, but I think they might be about 7 cents sharp. But the quality of that interval for me, still sounds like a fifth, still sounds quite pure, still sounds quite nice, usable, musical, but it's a slightly different characteristic.